everyone. Thank you for being here early. We appreciate it. Well, you already heard the amazing introduction of Ryan Smith from our host. Me and Ryan, we actually worked together at ABC, and we did many pieces together from 2014 until 2022 for Good Morning America. So we have a rich history together.
Now I feel old.
Yes. But we saw all these amazing shows, which are super impressive because even though Ryan does sports, he actually has a legal background as well. So he has the best of both worlds. Tell us about your career journey. How did you get your first job? Because I think that's very important to our audience here today.
Yeah, so I didn't have, first of all, good to see all you guys. Thanks for being here. Give yourselves, like I said earlier, give yourselves a hand for being here. Because this is how it starts, putting yourself in the right place to succeed. So I'll just say, I was a lawyer sitting in an office. Never done TV before, did not go, so my path was a little bit non-traditional. I wasn't in the communications school when I went to Syracuse, where I went to undergrad. So I didn't know anything about it, but a friend of mine suggested I do something. So I went with a producer. I was an entertainment lawyer at the time. And I went with a producer client of mine who was like, oh, I'm going to put together a reel for you. So one day I stepped out of the law office, put on some jeans and a t-shirt, ran out in the street with her, and we filmed a bunch of stuff like an interview with an artist and me practicing doing a news story. And she sent it in to what was then TV One. And Al Sharpton at the time had a talk show called Sharp Talk. This is so weird. He had a talk show called Sharp Talk where we sat in barber chairs and debated issues. So that's what he was doing, 8 years ago. So, or 10 years ago or something. So I did that. Somebody saw me there and said, would you want to do a show for BET? We want to talk to you about some issues. I went there. They said, oh, would you want to host the show? So I started doing that with a couple other people. And then somebody from CNN saw me doing that, said, would you want to come on CNN and talk about the Iraq War and how it affects the black community? And I was like, I don't know anything about that, but sure. So one thing led to another. Somebody at HLN saw me, and then maybe about 5 or 6 months later, long story short, I was still practicing law. I was in LA working with a firm there, and a guy called me and said, can I just talk to you about stuff? It's a guy from HLN, which is Headline News. We talked for about an hour, hung up the phone, didn't hear from him for about 7 months when he was saying, I'm going to be in New York. Do you want to have dinner? And I said, sure. Went to dinner with him, and he said, I want you to quit your law job and host a show we're doing on Court TV. And that was it. I was like, I don't know if I should be doing that. But I ended up doing it, and one thing led to another, and I worked there, and then HLN, CNN, and then ABC. But I say all that to say this. All the plans we lay out when I started doing TV of I'll be here, I'll do this, I'll do that, none of it went according to plan. But just by being willing to take on these here and there, saying yes as much as I could, I ended up in a place where I never thought I'd be. Yeah.
So it sounds like a dream.
Yeah.
I have to say. It's not always a dream when you get your first job. But what are some of the lessons that you learn now, knowing what you know now and you didn't know when you first started?
That's a really great question. Always listen to Sabina when she produces. That's number one. No, I think the biggest lessons for me, if I could have told myself then, well, I mean, it's funny because now, you do things and you know how to do things in a certain way. So if I'm hosting SportsCenter, I know exactly what I'm doing and how I would do it. And so I wasn't so cautious before. The thing I know now is, as many risks as I took back then, take more risks. Do more things. And I know it's a lot of this stuff, we talk about this stuff and it's cliche. Take risks, network, all that kind of stuff. For real, step out of your comfort zone. That would be my big lesson looking back. There were a couple moments, especially in year 1, year 2. I mean, I was scared to death. When I started Court TV, the guy said to me, who hired me, he said, you know how to read prompter, right? Because so much of what we do is on prompter. I said, absolutely. I didn't even know what a prompter was. So I had to go home. I set up a laptop, right? I looked at TV and I said, okay, what are they doing on TV? They're reading a screen. So I set up a laptop about 10 feet away from me, got a wireless mouse, and just practiced for hours scrolling through a wireless mouse. I would say that was, when I went on, I clearly was not able to read prompter like I can now, but it was one of those moments where I was like, I'm just gonna take this risk, do this thing, I'm gonna do what I can now, make the mistakes, and worry about the consequences later. The other thing I would say that I would look back and say is, I would ask more questions. Too many times I walked on set early in my career, especially when I switched over from doing they have a totally different system, totally different wording. I didn't want to look silly, so I didn't ask a lot of questions. Those first couple sports centers were very rough because I didn't know what the heck anybody was talking about. But the thing is, if I would have asked questions, if I would have been unafraid to say, yeah, I don't know what that term is. I know everybody else does, but I don't. I'm the guy who's supposed to be front-facing on this show. Can you tell me what that is? Can you keep helping me with this? Can you keep giving me this that I need to be better? I think I would have been better off. Never stop asking questions, because the funny thing is, a lot of people, and I can tell you this now when I work with young producers, a lot of questions that young producers ask me and young talent ask me, it's things that I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? Not everybody knows that. Oh, I'm glad you asked that, because we need to tell people that more often. You will find that some of your questions can make things better. So always ask them.
Tell me a little bit more about that transition, because at GMA and ABC, we did more, feature stories, and we did criminal cases, and then you're transitioning into sports, which is completely different. And you said some terms you didn't know, but how did you get there? Because I think that's also important, because you got into a completely different field. Were you a sports fan? Like, tell us how you got there.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. So when I was growing up, the weirdest thing was I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. Like, that was my dream. But when you grow up, you let dreams go. So when I went to college and I went to law school, and I liked being a lawyer, I just kind of forgot about that dream. But the funniest thing was I was working at CNN, and ABC made me an offer, and I liked where I was. I was doing a show, I was anchoring a show at HLN. I liked CNN, it was kind of comfortable. I had just gotten married, we were having twins. I really wanted to stay where I was. But ABC wanted to sweeten the pot a little bit, so they were like, I tell you what, why don't we do a deal where you do like something every once in a while for ESPN? You like sports, right? And I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of do. And I thought about that dream, but I was like, nah, it's mostly going to be ABC, so whatever, it'd be nice to, in some way, be affiliated with ESPN. Well, cut to a couple years later, I had been working at GMA. GMA had put me on what we call a sports beat. So just because they knew I liked sports, they ended up putting me in a lot of sports stories. And it just so happened that Deflategate happened, and Donald Sterling decided to go on a racist rant and end up having to sell the Clippers. And all this stuff happened in sports that hadn't happened before I went there. And sports all of a sudden became a really big thing at GMA, which they really weren't before. So I guess, long story short, in terms of getting started, when I was at ABC, a guy from ESPN called me, and again, taking opportunities. He said, we have a host here named Bob Lee. He hosts a show called Outside the Lines. And he's getting older, and every once in a while he wants to take time off. Would you want to come in and sub-host for him? And I said, yes. So again, always saying yes. And from doing that, one thing led to another. I ended up switching over to doing more ESPN. They ended up cutting back on Outside the Lines, but then the guy who runs SportsCenter said, would you want to try SportsCenter? And I said, yeah. And I didn't want to say yes, because it just seems so far from what you're talking about, what I do at GMA, being a correspondent, doing long-form stories. It was just so different. And I see what people do on SportsCenter, and I was like, I don't even think I could do that. But I said yes anyway. And eventually, they asked me to come on and join as an anchor. And it was then that I remembered that dream that I had when I was a little kid and always wanted to be a sports anchor. And I remember I was anchoring a show, I think, with like Sage Steele. And I was like, when I was a little kid, I always wanted to do this. And I can't believe I'm sitting here with you. And she's like, you're just like everybody else here. It's fun. And again, I'm going to say this a lot because it kind of has defined what's happened in my career. Those dreams that you have, those things that you think you cannot do, those, oh, I'm not there right now. When I joined ABC, I never thought I would be at ESPN. Do not let those dreams go. Like, keep in touch with them. Keep writing about them. Because I tend to believe that somewhere in my mind that I always wanted to do that. And I never let it go. And that's what kept me saying yes, even through the scary things like SportsCenter.
Saying yes, taking every opportunity is the best advice that you can give to this crowd, to everyone. Tell us about some uncertainties in your career and how you overcame that. Yes, we're in the news, yes,
Okay.
so every day. But how you overcame that, or if there was a mistake, like how do you move on from that?
So I'll talk about uncertainties first and then mistakes. So first of all, if you're ever interested in doing anything in news or in media or in sports, anything that deals with entertainment, your life is going to be filled with uncertainty. Now, I'm a lawyer, so I really love certainty. That's kind of like why people become lawyers. It's like, I'm cautious, it's safe, you can make money, it's great. So I don't quite know how I ended up here, but I have to say, in terms of every day on the job presents things that you're not expecting. And it took me a while in this industry to learn that you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And again, I'm sorry for all the cliches. I promise you, I don't like wake up in the morning like, be comfortable being uncomfortable. But it really like is what it's like. So I'm gonna give you an example. The first time I went on GMA, it's a huge show, all these people, Sabina will tell you, like when you walk in GMA, it's really weird. The room is not very big. It's maybe like half the size of this room when you look at Robin and George and all those people sitting on the desk. But there's like 1 million people. There's like 30 or 40 people, sound, people walking around, all kinds of craziness. You know millions of people are looking at you. I go on GMA for the first time, and the prompter goes off. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Seconds, because they're like 5, 4, 3. It's like all this stuff is happening. Just go with it. I went with it. I lucked out. That has since on GMA happened many times. It happens all the time. You know, things, I've had people throw stuff at me while I'm on air. I've had people drop stuff on me while I'm on air. I've had people try to push me out of the way. It's all kinds of things. So I think the uncertainty of it all is part of the job. It's also part of the job if you're interested, and you know this very well, in terms of being a producer. I do not know how you do what you do, and I could not do what I do without producers. Because they are the people out there trying to make sure that all the people you see on camera are able to do what they can do. And there's so much stuff going on. Like when you're in the field doing a live story, there might be people running around, the shots falling down, cameras are going off, lighting. And yet when the camera comes on, you're like, hey, how's it going? Everything's good. You know, you have to kind of set all that up. So whether you're going to be on camera or behind the camera, uncertainty is a part of it. Now, mistakes. So one of the scariest things about being a legal analyst is if I say one word wrong, people are all over me. And one of the things I didn't realize about being at ESPN, so when you're on ABC, it's just kind of a different thing. ABC, I always felt like the viewers, GMA and I still work for 2020, the viewers, they almost want to see you win. So a lot of what you see on Twitter or your response on social media is like, hey, I know that might not have been perfect, but you did a good job. And every time I'd read Twitter, I'm like, these people are so nice. ESPN, they're like, what's wrong with you? Like, because people are so serious about sports. I mean, I'm serious about sports, but I didn't know people were that serious. So everything you say, every name I mess up on ESPN, and it happens literally every other day. It's like every mistake you make, people are watching, they're jumping on you. It's their favorite team, it's their favorite player, and you have totally ruined their day. So it's like a mistake is part of life. But what I learned from being a legal analyst that I kind of bring into ESPN is, because everybody, when I do legal analysis, you really can't mess it up. And if you do, which you will, you have to find a way to kind of recover from that. What I learned from it is, when you make the mistake, you just have to kind of move on. It's like so I work for a show called E60, so I've interviewed a lot of athletes, and they all kind of say the same thing. It's like I make a mistake, it's on to the next play. It's on to the next play, on to the next thing. Whether you're interviewing for something in entertainment, whether you're working on something in entertainment, Realize you're going to make mistakes, and sometimes, especially early on, it's going to happen every day. For me, it still happens. It happens all the time. And it happens in stuff that I know I shouldn't have made a mistake on. But I got to get to the next play. I got to get to the next thing. Like the viewer, a lot of times, they're not here. What you think is happening and people are seeing, and oh, they're going to laugh and they're going to say this about me, and people are going to, some of that might happen, but that can't be what your MO is on that day. It's, no, how about the other 99.9% who don't care about that, but actually want to hear what you have to say? That's kind of what I focus on.
And the reason why he is so successful is because he does his research and
Oh,
he's very
work.
knowledgeable.
We can talk about
so like
that.
when the prompter goes off, he actually knows what to say.
Yeah.
So
that's a little
there you
trick.
go.
Just really quick on that. That's a little trick I learned from that first time. Whenever I went on GMA after that, I memorized what I was going to say because I got to be ready for the prompter to go down. Same thing I do on SportsCenter now. Prompters, like I did a show called Get Up yesterday, and we had a new operator, and the whole first hour of the show was off track. The whole first hour. I have to kind of mentally have a sense of what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be memorization, but you just have to know your roadmap. And you have to, sometimes I double and triple up on what I have on the desk. I have an iPad, I have scripts, just to make sure I'm covered.
And what advice can you give to young people who want to work in sports, want to work in media, but what can they do to stand out? Because there's a lot of people who want to do media. There's 1,000 people for one job, and I'm not kidding.
It's so true. What can you do to stand out? Okay, so to me there's two stages. There's getting in the door and what you do once you're in the door. So the getting in the door part, to me, really quick, before I did TV, I was a lawyer, and in my early career as a lawyer, I worked for an NFL team. And I ended up working, when I was in law school, I interned at the NFL. So I have some experience in trying to get in doors that are usually closed to most of us, especially people like us. There's two things I say. So getting in the door. The most important thing, and I want you to really hear this and consider what you are unable to do. Some people have regional restrictions. Some people don't want to go to certain places. But my thing in terms of getting in the door is go to everything, be available for everything. Now, what do I mean by that? When you go to these things, look, I actually happen to be a kind of a shy person, so I'm not really good at being the best networker in the room. But when I go to a thing, I tell myself, because I'm a little bit shy, I tell myself, I'm going to speak to 5 people. Just little, like, make little goals for yourself. I'm a little bit shy. I don't like going to events. I just feel uncomfortable. I don't know what to say. Okay, so today I'm just going to speak to one person. That one person, I like to use this kind of multiplier analogy. You speak to one person, they're like, man, I really like that guy, Ryan. I'm going to tell so-and-so about him. That's 2 people who might say, because they were talking to the other person, maybe talking to somebody else who knew you, oh, yeah, I know that guy. Now that's 3 people. Step by step, go to as many things as you can. Go to as many things as you can all over the place and make yourself seen and get to know people. And I believe that if you have a good conversation with one person, it's better than having a small talk surface, I'm not really saying anything about myself conversation with 90 people. So that's getting in the door. On this very point, people want to be with people that they like. It is not necessarily, oh, because I don't look like you, I'm not going to get this job. It's they want to like you. They want to know that having you around is going to make their life easier. It's going to make their life better. It really is that simple. I came in this industry knowing nothing. I did not know how to set up a camera. I do not know what lighting means. I don't know any of the terminology. I literally just walked out and was like, here I am. But I really tried to make myself likable. Even with Al Sharpton in those early days, he was always like, can you talk about this? Can you talk about that? Can you talk about that? I'll talk about whatever you want. My thing is always like, I'm here to make your life easier, and I don't care who you are. And I don't care if it's the most junior intern or the most senior producer. I'm nice, I'm likable, what can I do? So once you're in the door, work, work, work. I'm going to say it again. Work, like write it in your notebook. Work. Networking, great. Getting to know people, absolutely huge. These are great things. Work. We can tell you that the kind of people we like to be around on shows like GMA, where the stakes are really high and the margin for error is like really thin, we want to make sure we're around people that are preparing us. Hey, Ryan, I have this extra tip for you that you might want to throw in. Man, I love that. Because now you just made me look better to the people. And the people are like, oh, he did such a great job. What am I saying now? Well, I did a great job because so-and-so gave me that tip. Now the word about you is getting spread out there. I'm telling you, you guys will look at this and you'll say, when you look at, say if you want to be on air, when you look at it and you say, man, that just seems so far away, so daunting, it's all these little things that will make you a presence in this industry, whether you're behind the camera or in front of the camera. And trust me, anyone can do it. Every single one of you in this room can reach the highest levels of this industry.
I think that's the best advice you've given so far.
Yeah.
Work, work, work.
Yeah, man.
And take every opportunity. You're on air.
Yeah.
You pretty much started on air. What advice can you give the people in the audience and people that are watching us about what we need for that first reel? Because that first reel, when you do send it out to everybody, like what are those small, 3 things that need to be part of that reel?
So I don't know, I don't know how much you guys are familiar with being on camera. How many people on here have done stuff on camera? Raise your hand. Okay, so that's good to know. Whether you've been on camera or not, one thing I've always found is so let's say, you might say, oh, this guy has a little bit of energy right now. When I'm on camera, it's a little bit more energy. Like, I have to be a little bit more energetic. The camera, in some ways, will downcast you a little bit. So the one thing I really want is energy. The second thing is, in terms of reels, I'll take you back to my very first reel. It was real simple. Interviewing somebody I don't know, showing the ability to do what we call a stand-up, which is I'm basically doing 10 or 15 seconds or longer about something that's happening around me, and doing a straight one-on-one interview. So what I'm trying to do, those are like 3 essentials I always feel for a reel, because I'm trying to show that I can do a couple of the skills that basically we do. I mean, it's all really we do. What do I do on SportsCenter? I read a prompter. I'll do a stand-up every once in a while, so I'm standing up, talking to camera, do some things. I'm interviewing some people, and if you're interested in sports, I want to show that I can do a highlight, which is a little bit tough to do. You might just have a basketball game playing over your video and you're describing the action. But everything you do on that reel, here's what I did that I think can help you. Everything you do on that reel, look at the people you like in TV and copy them. This is not rocket science. We're not like you have to create your own image so you can be different from everybody. Yes, that's great. You're going to show them that once you get in the door. To get in the door, if you like Robin Roberts and you like her delivery, then try to practice that delivery and give it. There's not like you can't be like somebody else to show that greatness. They want to see that you can do the job. And if that's what resonates with you and that's what makes you great on camera for your reel, I say do it.
One important thing about your reels, timing. Because something that I've seen when I go to the NABJ and AHA events.
Too long.
Yes. So tell them, how long should your reel be?
Okay.
Not too long, not too short.
Yeah, I would say, I wonder what you think too, but I would say 3 to 5 minutes. Let me tell you why. This woman right here, very, very busy. I mean, you heard about all the awards and all that, but the reason I'm referencing Sabina is because she's going to be looking at your reel more than I will, really, I think. And so on our computer, on the phone, people calling, story to cover, Race and Justice Unit ABC, things always going on, like getting the hit ready, all these things are happening and your reel comes across this person's desk. I want you to think about what that means. Think about when you are at your most busy time ever and somebody says, can you look at this? What's your attention span going to be like? Pretty short, right? Because I got a million things going on. Yes, I'll look at it. I want to say yes to everything, but I got a lot of stuff going on. Looking at the reel, come right out with something strong. I gotta tear her away from her computer and the phone calls to look at me. That's not easy. Start with something strong. Don't give me your slow stuff at the beginning. Give me the, hey, this is who I am, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now I'm listening. Now, the phone's still ringing while she's watching your reel. So we got to get this thing quick, like 3 to 5 minutes. I get a lot of reels that are 15, 20 minutes. I just can't. I have to stop at about 10 minutes and say, we got to cut this down. Because 3 to 5 minutes is even asking a lot there. But I think if you can get it to 3 to 5 minutes, that's pretty strong. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say that too, but I would go for 3. 3 minutes is perfect.
3's great, yeah.
If you can manage. You just mentioned the race and culture unit at ABC. Diversity in media is a big question, something that we are still working on. We're doing a great job at ABC on the front lines of every big diverse story. What are some of the changes that you think we should think of, or that you thought of? Is it different in sports? Let us know.
It's not different in sports. I think we still have an environment that does not have enough diversity. And I think part of that is because a lot of the folks who are on top are not always the most diverse groups. So I think that's where it starts. We got to have more changes at the top to invite more diverse voices in, because what we have learned from doing news and from doing sports is what you see in media is a reflection of who you see producing that media. So if we don't have those diverse, what's fun? If we don't have those diverse voices in the room, we don't get that diverse content on air. We don't get that diverse perspective. One thing I really want to reference at ABC, so we need more of that. That's my biggest thing. One thing that's very interesting about ABC is I joined ABC at a time, so I'm still technically there in some way, but I joined, it's gone through 3 different leadership changes. When I started, most of the people on top were not necessarily diverse. But that changed while I was there, and I saw the difference in the content. Like, I saw the difference in, here's a big one, the willingness for people to listen to what I had to say based on my background, as opposed to, no, this is what the viewer wants. That's always the thing they give you in the beginning. This is what the viewer wants. Yeah, but, we're covering this story. I've covered so many stories about young black men being killed that I used to, in the beginning, especially because of what I came from at CNN and HLM, where that was a lot of what I did, I used to tell people, no, I think I have a unique perspective to share here. And people would say, that's not necessarily what the viewer wants. That's not necessarily the time of day. That has shifted as more of those diverse voices have entered. Now, it's not completely shifted. This is not like utopia, but it's changing, and to me, that's progress.
Yeah, and also talking about our audience and not what the viewer wants.
Yeah.
Actually, at ABC and most major networks, NBC and CBS, if we didn't have our diverse audience, we would not be number 1.
That is true.
So that's a huge shift. And when he's saying that we have had 3 different leaderships, we actually have the first woman black president at ABC News, and I'm very proud to say that. One last question before we go to Q&A, because I know you guys probably also have questions that you want to ask. So I mentioned research earlier. For me as a producer, I read every newspaper. I go to all our local stations. But what are some of the newspapers, blogs, like what's your go-to that you can tell the audience about that they should do? Because one thing that I'm always teaching my producers when they come into my unit and I'm training them and developing them is like read. Research. But what are some of your top places you go to?
Oh, so this is a good one. Okay, so I'm going to say this. You're going to laugh at me, but it's okay. I'm going to say this to say some of the things I'm going to mention, you have to learn in today's environment. You cannot read a lot of research and media without at least judging it critically. So I'm not saying go out to this source and take it as gospel. There are certain things that I do like that on certain topics. So I put a lot of value into some of the stuff they do at the New York Times. That's always a big one for me. But in sports, it's a little bit different. And everything is moves so much faster in the sports world that one of the big things, you're going to laugh at me. One of the big things we go to is Twitter. And I'm not saying, and again, remember what I said. I'm not reading Twitter and saying, this is news. I'm reading it to say, what's happening? And what I do from there is we're really lucky at ESPN. We have this really great research unit that basically covers, if you ever work at ESPN, it's really, really great if you love sports. It covers everything to the most deepest minutia that you could ever imagine of any game that you could ever think of. So I take what I see on Twitter, social media, whatever, and then I take that and I say, okay, give me more detail that I can rely on through our stats and info department, through our research department. We do a lot of work in-house on Slack. And I used to do something similar at ABC. ABC was a little bit different because I could look, you're talking more general news, so I could look at local news. Like here's a good example. If I ever dropped into a story, so if I'm a correspondent and they send me somewhere, the first thing I'm doing when I get to my hotel room is I'm looking at local news. How are they covering the story that I want to do? Then as I'm preparing my story, I'm reading the Times, all the major publications. I like the Post a lot. But I really focus on my local newspaper because I know that I'm coming in from the national perspective, but I want to give the viewers something that's happening from where I am, because you're looking at me on TV from Jacksonville, if the story's in Jacksonville. Don't you want to hear what's happening in Jacksonville? So it's kind of like, that's a little bit of what I do. Sports, again, a little bit different. On SportsCenter, we're trying to figure out, okay, the game just happened last night. I'm hosting a show 7 o'clock in the morning. What was happening overnight? That's why some of the social media platforms help me a little bit. But I don't take that as gospel. I take that, I research it, and I don't say any. Most important thing, you guys, I do not say anything on air that cannot be verified. Ever. I had this great boss at ABC, this guy Ben Sherwood, one of my favorite bosses ever. He used to run ABC. And he had this great saying, it's better to be right than to be first. If you don't remember anything from what we talk about today, please remember that in your career. You will always get pressure to be first. Being right will help you with the one thing that no one can take from you, your reputation. It is everything. You can go from network to network being the person, that person is always right. That person never takes liberties with what's on air. That will fuel you for the rest of your career. Being first will get you the headline. Being right will get you the career.
Great. Well, I think that's a great note to end it. I know the students want to ask some questions. Is this a good time to start lining up, ask Q&A? You guys want to go to the mics and
Remember, ask me
questions?
any question.
Yes.
Do not hold back.
Yes, this is
You're
your
looking
moment.
at a guy who didn't know the answer to anything.
I think. Yeah, and then please introduce yourself as well and where you go to school, and be interesting for us to know. You want to start?
Yes. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. My name is my name is Shayna Gerard. I go to NYU. My question is about your public persona. How was it transferring or like moving from being a lawyer to someone who has a very public persona?
Oh, Shayna, that's a great question. Because being a lawyer, I could hide in an office all day, which was awesome. But I was really shocked. So two things. First of all, I started in TV maybe around 2011. So the world was a bit different. So it was, social media especially was much more encouraging. So it was actually really great because people were like, you're on TV. Yeah, that guy's kind of nice. I like him. He has good energy. That was great. That tide turned over the last couple years. So it has been difficult because in many ways, it's hard to do something that you put a lot of energy into and people are tearing you down. I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I am not a big social media guy for that reason. I just found that in my life, it was causing more negative than positive. Like I said, I use it a little bit as a research tool, but being a public persona, I think, and I'm a very small one, can be a little bit jarring. But I think you have to figure out what you are comfortable with. You do not have to be a sort of servant to Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff and see how many followers you got and all that. I just found that a little bit detrimental. But you can, in some ways, use it as encouraging.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Hi.
Ed? Hi.
My name is Cindy Nanclares. I am a graduate from the
Cindy, you said?
Cindy.
Yeah.
From the Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY, Newark. I work as a content creator and video producer currently. My question to both of you, and I'd love to also get Sabina's perspective on this, is there have been so many shifts in the media industry, not only over the last few years, but 6 months. Layoffs in multiple companies, there have been so many changes and so many swirls going on. I wonder what your perspectives are in the future of where media is going, and sort of like, are you optimistic?
You want to take it first?
No, go ahead.
So my wife thinks that I'm going to be replaced by a chat GPT AI in
No.
5 years. I'm not kidding. She says it to me all the time. She's like, "You're just going to be a chat GPT AI." So I don't even know. Like, well, that's nice. But so am I optimistic? Yes, and here's why. You're a content creator, right? You are saying something that I cannot say. I can't copy what you do. Like, you have a unique perspective that I can't duplicate. Where you came from, Cindy, what your background is, all that stuff goes into how we tell stories on air. I can't tell you how many times that I've done a story on GMA, and that little minute they give me, where I try to put in something about me that makes it unique, that no one else at any other network can copy. That is what gives me hope, because I still need your brand of content creation. No chat GPT, whatever it is, who cares what's next? It can't replace you. And that human aspect of it, I think, is always going to be there.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better. I am also hopeful. I think the industry is changing, and you're right. But I'm hoping it's changing for the better, right? We have social media. I know you don't love it,
It's still good.
but we have other ways to meet the audience, and I think streaming is huge, and this is the direction we're going to, because a lot of young people don't want to turn their TVs on anymore. But it's also meeting the audience where they are as well, which is even more important for you as young people, as you come into the industry, knowing every aspect of production, even if you want to be on air. I'm going to tell you that the best people on air right now at ABC were producers before.
It's true.
So I think that's how we all survive, is to know everything that we can know and be experts in the field. So yes, I have to be hopeful, otherwise I don't have a job.
No, it's true. It's true. I didn't have that path, but there are so many times where I've had to play catch up because people I work with are producers. They're great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I think she was.
Okay.
He came after. You can go ahead. Yeah. So go ahead. Hi, nice to see you again.
Hi, lovely to see you again, Sabina. Ryan, so lovely to have you today. My name is Gaila, and I'm in the graduate program for media studies at Pratt. My question is directed towards Ryan this morning, and it kind of builds on a topic that you touched on, questions before last. So in the cultural moment, there seems to be a shift towards an awareness of how diversity plays out in every space, even in spaces that appeared disparate, for example, sports. But when we look at the history of sports, even decades ago with Muhammad Ali, we see that sports and activism have often been interlinked, and athletes have often been used as endorsements for political campaigns or for, pressing public issues. Right now we see it played on social media, and there are all kinds of avenues, whether it's racial tensions being stoked. I'm thinking about like Angela Reese and Caitlin Clark through news programming, or, news programmers themselves attacking athletes like Laura Ingraham. It's common a couple of years ago. I'm curious to know, from where you sit, how do you feel like sports activism can best work towards remedying this? Because like all issues, it is being exacerbated on social media, and there's little we can do about echo chambers, but we can be very intentional about the programming that's put out and that's disseminated on these platforms that reach millions of people across the world.
Gaila, it's a great question, and I know I don't want this to seem overly simplistic, but I just believe in so much of what I see, especially when we talk about activism, and we struggle with this on air. We're always dancing around stuff. We're trying to find different ways to say it so we can appeal to everybody and not exclude anybody. It's tough, but I would say we need more. We need more. I have to say I loved what Angel Reese was doing. And I love that we were able to keep covering it because she kept doing it. She would not let it go. And there was, I think there were a lot of folks that saw, I loved how Caitlin Clark handled it as well. I don't think, if you guys are not familiar with this, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, two basketball players, two of the best basketball players in women's college basketball. Caitlin Clark is an awesome personality. She's white. And many times during the tournament, she was overtly gesturing to her opponent, talking trash. That's what happens in sports. Well, Angel Reese, when LSU won the title against Caitlin Clark's team, Angel Reese gave it right back to her. Yep, pointing to the rings. I got a ring. And Caitlin Clark, throughout the tournament, everybody was like, wow, she's got spirit. And Angel Reese, when she did it, everyone, lots of folks were like, how dare you? You've gone over the line. And I'm telling you, the conversations we had the day after the title game, because I was doing a show, even with my co-anchor, we were just on different sides. And what really helped, you asked what sports activism can do. What really helped was what a lot of athletes do, and I get it, because I do it. When you face backlash, Angel Reese faced so much backlash, it would have shut anyone down. She did not stop. She forced us to keep covering it. We couldn't stop. And there were so many arguments we had at ESPN, like, do we have to keep doing it? People were like, we have to keep doing this. Well, she keeps talking, so I can say, let's keep doing it. We got to keep doing it. Everybody's talking about it. We serve the audience is talking about it. When athletes and sports activists stop, then that gives networks and other folks who are trying to appeal to a lot of people, rightfully so, that's how it works, that gives them permission to stop. But when Angel Reese kept pushing it, Caitlin Clark came out and said, that kind of forced Caitlin Clark to come out and say, hey, I think what she did, she's talking trash like I am. Then that story grew. We did that story. Then Angel Reese kept coming back. And then the First Lady said, we should invite both teams. And Angel Reese pushed back on that. This story lived on, and it built up women's basketball. It built up the conversation. And we covered it for like 2 straight weeks.
Yep.
That's how it works. If you are a sports activist, if you are an activist in general, keep the pressure on. Keep doing it. Do not stop. Because the moment you stop and get discouraged is the moment the media turns away.
And there's one picture that we did at ABC, is both girls, white and black,
Yep.
doing the exact same thing. You know,
Yeah.
a picture tells more than 1,000 words.
Yes.
That's it. So,
So great point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What you just said was very poignant. My name is Lonnie Lewis. I'm a 42-year-old Army veteran with 7 years mental health space work, and I just graduated Fairleigh Dickinson with my bachelor's in psychology. I love the media space, but I see a difficulty breaking in for people that are in my age range. I'm so much older than everybody. I'm assuming I'm older than everybody here because of all the young faces. But my question for you is, how does someone with as much diverse experience that I have and not as much focused experience in the media space, how do I break into, and how do I get, even if it's just an entry-level position? Because I'm not in it for money, to be honest with you, because of my time in the military. So I'm looking for something that I can sink my teeth into, that I'm not so much concerned about making 80 grand a year starting, you know what I mean? How does somebody like me break in? And I'm also a content creator. How do I break in and break my content and get into the industry?
So I'll tell you this. I started doing this job when I was around your age. Wow. So it is, I am not young. Like,
you look good.
I'm not going to tell you how old I am. You can probably figure it out. But I would say I will give you the roadmap that I used. The moment I started going to places like ABC, CNN, the first show, maybe the second or third show I did on CNN was with Anderson Cooper. And I sat on the desk with this guy, and I'm like, I am sitting with Anderson, what am I doing here? Like, oh, please don't mess up. But the thing that I learned how to do, because that is the nature of what you are trying to do, Sabina said it earlier, you are trying to work in an industry where thousands of people want one thing. The way you do that, and the way you do it specifically is, you said you were in the military. You said 42, right?
Yes.
okay, you have 15, 20 years of working experience that other people do not have. Use what you have. Do not think about what you don't.
Okay.
Period. Everybody in this room, use what you have. Do not. It's like you got to take it out of your mind. I get that the person sitting next to you is 20 years younger and they've been doing it for 15 years. I don't know how that's possible, but whatever. Use what you have is 7 years in the military, perspective that you might want to do stories that focus on the military. You've got the experience. I don't. If I'm going for the same job, I can't get it. You got more than I have. You might have done other things in your time that other people don't have. Keep talking about the experiences that you do have. It happens all the time at ABC. I can't tell you how many. Perfect example. When I started at ABC, people knew I did some sports on TV, but they didn't actually know I worked in sports. I had a side conversation with a person who I love dearly, who is no longer there. I had a side conversation about how I like sports, and I was on a sports beat the next day. It was not any scientific thing where some high manager said, this is going to be our sports guy. Somebody was like, we got a sports story, and somebody else was like, he likes sports, and I ran with it. That's what I'm talking about. Make a list, all of you, really, make a list of the things that you are good at, the perspectives that you can share, and keep looking at that list. I talk about the simple things. That's what I did. When I would get unnerved by all the greatness that was around me, I was like, wait a second, I worked at the NFL. If there's ever an NFL story, I can talk about that probably better than most people. I was a lawyer. And it's not about being a lawyer or working at the NFL. It's about the things you bring that other people don't.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your service. Thanks. Well, any final words? I think this is our ending. And thank you so much for your questions, everyone.
Any final word? Let's keep doing this. Come on. No, my final word for you, and I know I gave you a lot of little things to remember, but I'll just say this, kind of in that same vein. Just keep it simple. I get that it's not an easy industry, and I get that you all have dreams and goals. Don't let go of the dreams, and take everything one step at a time. You might not get the job tomorrow, but there's been so many things that I've wanted to do that it didn't happen the next day, but it happened a couple months later, or it happened in a way that I never thought it would happen a couple years later, or something else happened that was better than what I wanted. Take it easy. We're so trained in this society to be like, well, what's next? Our parents are asking us, what are you going to do? I'm going to do this. I'm going to be here. We got to get away from that, because that's not how media works. Media is so organic. You're going to be doing something. Somebody's going to see you and be like, hey, you were great in sports. Would you like to do race and justice now? You'd be like, what? But it works that way. It's weird. But because of that, you're going to have to take a breath and simply say to yourself, I'm going to take this thing one step at a time. I'm going to remain open to what's out there. I'm just going to be present, work my butt off, and just try to be and see where this thing takes me. And trust me, you will enjoy this career more than you would have ever imagined.